Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm Alex.
And I'm Morgan. Today we are digging into something that I think a lot of people feel but might not have a name for.
Exactly. It's this kind of silence.
Yeah.
But it's not a peaceful silence. It's more of an abandonment.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. We've all heard about quiet quitting at work.
Of course. That whole idea of doing the bare minimum. You clock in, you do your job, you clock out. No extra effort, no staying late. You're just there.
Right. And honestly, in a lot of corporate environments, that's a perfectly sane response to burnout. It's a way of protecting your own energy.
It really is a kind of self-preservation.
Right.
But the reason we're doing this deep dive is because we've seen this exact same behavior, this same calculated withdrawal start to show up in our private lives.
In our most intimate spaces. And when it happens there, in a partnership, it's a whole different ball game. It becomes something much, much darker.
We're calling it relationship quiet quitting, RQQ for short. And it's, I think, really important that we define it right off the bat.
Absolutely, because this is not just being in a slump or having a bad week with your partner.
No. The core of it, the thing we really need to unpack today, is this state that the sources call ghosting while present.
That phrase just hits you, doesn't it?
It's chilling. You're still physically there. You share a home. You might even be raising kids together. You definitely still split the cost of Netflix.
But emotionally, you've checked out. You've secretly left the building. That deep generative part of the connection is gone. It's been severed, but silently.
It's like an invisible wall has gone up right down the middle of the bed.
That's a perfect image for it. And I can tell you, in my practice, I see this all the time. Couples come in and they're not fighting. In fact, sometimes they almost brag about it. Oh, we never fight.
Right. As if that's the ultimate sign of a healthy relationship.
Exactly. But they're just quiet. They're like two ships passing in the night. They live in the same house, but they are in completely different worlds.
And that actually brings us to the first really big idea we need to tackle, which is that this quiet, this profound indifference, it can be so much more painful than just having an argument.
Oh, 100%. A fight, for all its messiness, it requires you to be engaged. It means you still believe there's something worth fighting for.
You believe the outcome actually matters.
Yes. The absence of that fight, that isn't peace. It's decay. It's the sound of the foundation cracking under the house.
And the person on the receiving end of it is just left floating in this vacuum of uncertainty. They don't even have anything to push against.
It's incredibly disorienting.
So our mission today is really threefold. First, we have to unpack what RQQ actually is and how it's different from just, relationship boredom.
The what and the how.
Second, we're going to get into the why. What are the silent motives that lead someone to do this?
And finally, the most important part, how do you spot the red flags? And, is there a path back? Or is the only way out to get out for real?
You need to cut through all that silence.
Let's do it. There's a lot to get through here.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The definition. How do we draw a really clear line between this quiet quitting and just a normal slump that every long-term couple goes through?
This is the absolute crucial first step because everyone's mind immediately goes to, oh, we're just in a boring phase.
Right. Things have just gotten a little stale.
And look, let's be totally honest. Every single long-term relationship hits those plateaus. It's inevitable. Life gets in the way. Work is stressful. The kids are demanding.
And suddenly you realize your last three conversations have been about who's taking out the recycling.
Exactly. The conversations are 90% logistics. The immediate spark isn't there. Things can feel dull. That's a plateau. It's normal.
So on a plateau, you're maybe tired, maybe a little bored, but
yeah,
there's still something there.
There's still latent energy. That's the key.
Yeah.
If your partner came to you and said, hey, let's go away for the weekend or let's try something new, you'd still be willing to show up.
You'd engage.
You'd engage. Because a plateau is a temporary dip in enthusiasm. You still believe in the future of the relationship, even if the present feels a bit gray. You can fix a plateau with effort.
But RQQ,
yeah,
that's something else entirely. It sounds more like a fundamental change.
It is. The sources are so clear on this. The crucial difference is that RQQ is a decision. It might be conscious, it might be subconscious, but it's a decision to stop investing. Period.
So it's not just a dip, it's a full stop.
It's a full cessation of any contribution to the relationship's future. Emotionally, practically, you're done. One person, or maybe even both, has internally declared what you could call emotional bankruptcy.
Emotional bankruptcy. Wow, that's a powerful way to put it.
It is. because it implies you've looked at the books, you've seen the account is at zero, and
Yeah.
you've just decided to stop making any more deposits.
So where does that show up in the day-to-day? What does that actually look like?
It really manifests in three main areas, and they all come back to a withdrawal of two things: effort and vulnerability. So the first one is you stop sharing your day. And I don't just mean the big headlines like, I got the promotion, or the car broke
I
down.
mean the little things, the texture of your life.
The texture, exactly. The weird thought you had on your commute, the funny thing the barista said to you, that tiny flicker of anxiety you felt about a meeting tomorrow, all those little things that, build a bridge between your inner world and theirs.
You stop building that bridge. You essentially decide there's a part of your life that is now a private landscape,
Yeah.
and they are no longer welcome there.
You start editing yourself.
Yeah.
Heavily. You filter everything. You only share information that is absolutely required for the logistical functioning of the household.
That's the vulnerability piece. What about the effort piece?
That's the flip side of the coin, and it's the second area. You stop asking about their day. Or, and this is almost worse, you ask superficially.
The rote question, how is your day?
Yes. And you're not actually listening for the answer. There's a huge difference between how was work and, hey, how did that three-pointers meeting go? I know you were dreading it.
The second one requires memory. It requires curiosity. It requires you to have actually paid attention before.
It requires you to allocate emotional energy to their life. And the quiet quitter has stopped allocating that energy. They perform the question because they know they're supposed to, but they're just waiting for the performance to be over so they can move on to, what's for dinner.
And the person on the other side feels that, don't they? They feel the emptiness behind the question.
Oh, absolutely. It's hollow. And that leads to the third and maybe the most destructive sign.
Which is?
You stop trying to resolve conflicts. The moment a disagreement comes up, and they always do, that's just the friction of two people living together. The quiet quitter just folds.
They don't engage. They don't push back. They don't even fight.
Nothing. Because why would you? If you've already decided deep down that the relationship is over, why would you waste energy fighting about the outcome of some argument? The outcome doesn't matter to you anymore.
You've already accepted the ending, so repairing some small part of the present seems pointless.
It's the ultimate sign you've given up. You're not saying, I give up on this one issue. You're saying, I give up on us fixing anything.
Which is, it's just a devastating realization. To understand that the person next to you has decided it's over, but they just haven't told you yet.
They haven't. They are living in the ghost of the partnership. The separation has happened in their soul, but not in the physical world. And that leads us right into the next big question.
The why. The question that I'm sure everyone is asking themselves right now, whether they're the quitter or the one being quit on, why? Why not just break up?
Exactly. If it's over, why endure this slow, agonizing psychological leak? Why stay?
It seems almost crueler, in a way.
In many ways it is, but the answer is actually quite simple, even if the psychology is complex. You stay because breaking up, what we can call loud quitting, is hard.
It's loud.
It's loud, it's messy, it's disruptive, it requires a massive immediate expenditure of energy, and quiet quitting is the path of least immediate resistance.
So even if the long-term pain is greater, the brain is choosing to avoid the short-term chaos.
Our brains are wired for that. We're talking about really powerful psychological forces here. You've got the sunk cost fallacy colliding with loss aversion.
Okay, unpack that a little.
Well, the sunk cost fallacy is this idea that you've already invested so much, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, kids, a mortgage, that you can't possibly walk away now. You'd be admitting that all that investment was for nothing.
So you keep investing in a failing stock because you can't bear to realize the loss.
Precisely. And that's tied to loss aversion, which is the psychological principle that the pain of losing something is twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. Your brain sees the immediate loss of the house, the routine, the shared identity as far more terrifying than the slow, ongoing loss of your own happiness.
You're prioritizing the structure over your own vitality.
100%. And we have to get really specific about those practical deterrents. We call it the event horizon.
The point of no return.
Right. It's that moment where everything changes. Loud quitting triggers an avalanche of logistics. You have to move. You have to divide up all your possessions, your finances. If you have kids, the complexity multiplies tenfold.
And that's just the practical stuff. What about the social cost?
That's often the part people fear the most, having to explain it to your parents, to your friends, having to break up the friend group. You're not just grieving the loss of your partner, you're grieving the loss of your identity as a couple.
Who are you at parties now? Who do you spend the holidays with? It's a total reinvention of the self.
And the event horizon is that moment you cross over into that unknown territory. It's terrifying. RQQ is the ultimate avoidance tactic. You stay put. You leverage the existing infrastructure, the house, the friends, the stability to avoid that short-term pain, even if it guarantees you a long term of just emptiness.
It's fear and convenience, really.
That's what it boils down to.
But I want to push back on that a little. Is it always just about fear and convenience? I mean, couldn't you argue that sometimes RQQ is actually a form of self-preservation?
Oh, absolutely. That's the other side of this, and it's so important. We have to look at RQQ as a defense mechanism. It's a safety net.
What do you mean by that?
If you've been in a relationship where you've been consistently hurt or ignored or gaslit, where every time you've tried to be vulnerable, it's been used against you.
Then shutting down feels like the only safe option.
It feels like survival. This is where we need to bring in a little bit of behavioral economics, specifically the work of Daniel Kahneman on System 1 and System 2 thinking.
Okay. System 1 is the fast, intuitive, emotional brain.
It's your autopilot. It's fast, automatic, emotional, and mostly subconscious. RQQ is a quintessential System 1 reaction. When your relationship becomes a constant source of pain and high-energy drama, your System 1 brain hits the emergency brake.
And that brake is detachment.
Detachment. The internal logic becomes, if I don't care, it can't hurt me anymore. You build the emotional wall not out of convenience, but to protect yourself from a perceived ongoing threat. You're trying to preserve what little mental health you have left.
So the quiet quitter is, in that scenario, effectively putting themselves in a little quarantine unit inside the relationship.
Yes. They're saying, I'm going to conserve all my remaining emotional energy for myself because giving it to this relationship is a losing game.
But can that actually work? Can that sustain a person long term? Because it feels like a strategy that has a massive hidden cost.
It has an exponential cost. And this is the trap. It's not a solution. It's a delay tactic that ends up poisoning everything. This is why I use the analogy of living in a house with a slow gas leak.
I like that. Explain that more.
Well, you don't have the big, scary explosion of a massive fight. You avoid the loud quitting. That's the upside.
You get the quiet.
You get the quiet, but you are slowly, day by day, losing your ability to breathe. The emotional atmosphere becomes toxic and thin. You can't experience real joy or spontaneity or deep connection in that house. You're not really living, you're just functionally operating.
And after a while, you probably don't even notice the smell of the gas anymore. It just becomes normal.
It becomes your normal. And here's the really insidious part. It doesn't just damage the current relationship, it damages you. It trains you to be permanently guarded.
You learn that retreat is the safest option.
You perfect the art of the emotional retreat. Your System 1 brain learns that vulnerability equals pain. And that makes you functionally unavailable for any future relationship, too, even a healthy one. You've taught yourself that the only way to be safe is to be a ghost.
And a ghost can't build a new home. It can only haunt the old one.
Exactly.
So if we accept that this is such a damaging state to be in, we have to talk about diagnosis. For the person listening to this right now who is having that sinking feeling of recognition, what are the clear, undeniable red flags?
Okay. The first one is the most counterintuitive, which is probably why it gets missed so often. We call it the death of conflict.
The idea that the silence you think is peace is actually indifference.
That's it. We're conditioned to think a bad relationship means more fighting, more drama, more slammed doors. But with RQQ, the most dangerous sign is when the fighting stops.
Because, as you said, fighting means you still care.
You care about the outcome. You believe the relationship is flexible enough to be improved by the argument. It's a sign of investment. When that investment is gone, the arguments disappear.
So the behavioral cue is what? If something that always used to start a fight suddenly gets no reaction.
That's the tell. Let's say your partner is always late, and it has driven you crazy for years. You've had the same fight 100 times. Then one day, they're an hour late, and you just don't say anything. Or worse, they say, sorry, I'm late, and you just shrug and say, it's fine, whatever.
You're not saying, I've learned to be more patient.
No, you're saying, I no longer care enough to spend the energy to disagree with you. Your actions have become irrelevant to my emotional state because I have detached from you.
That's so chilling. The absence of the reaction is the loudest sound in the room.
It is. It's the sound of apathy. But it doesn't just happen with big conflicts. This is a slow process. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Which brings us to the second red flag.
Red flag number 2. Micro withdrawals. These are the tiny, subtle erosions of connection. Individually, they seem like nothing. You could easily explain them away, but when you add them all up, they create this huge, uncrossable canyon between you.
And this ties into the work of researchers like John Gottman, right? The idea of bids for connection.
Exactly. A bid for connection is any small attempt to get attention, affection, or affirmation from your partner. A healthy relationship is full of them. You constantly turn toward each other's bids. RQQ is when you systematically stop making bids and you stop responding to them.
So give me some concrete examples. What are these micro-withdrawals?
Well, the digital connection is often the first to go.
Okay.
Think about all the little ways you connect during the workday. You send a funny meme you saw, you text a link to an article you think they'd like, you send a quick message that just says, thinking of you.
Little anchors throughout the day that say, we're still connected, even when we're apart.
Yes. The quiet quitter stops throwing out those anchors. They stop mapping their daily life onto their partners. That little window into their world slowly closes.
And the physical world, does it show up there too?
Big time. It's the end of what we call incidental physical contact.
Not sex, but the other stuff.
All the other stuff, the stuff that really builds intimacy. You know, you're in the kitchen together, and you used to always put a hand on their back as you walked past them.
Or you'd be sitting on the couch and your feet would just naturally be touching.
Right. Small, unconscious affirmations that say, we are a unit. The quiet quitter stops doing that. Their body becomes precise. They start to navigate the shared space in a way that avoids contact. There's a subtle but very real physical distance that opens up.
And I imagine the third piece of this is about the future.
It is. You stop making future plans. And I don't just mean the big 5-year plan. I mean the 3-month plan, the 1-month plan.
Hey, should we get tickets for that concert in July?
Exactly. Healthy relationships are always generating forward momentum. They're always building the next thing to look forward to. The quiet quitter lives in this very ambiguous, perpetual present. Because planning a future requires investing energy in a future you no longer believe in.
So if you put all of that together, the depth of conflict, the micro-withdrawals, what kind of psychological state does that leave the relationship in?
It creates a state we call the perpetual present. The relationship has no past it's learning from and no future it's building toward. It just exists day to day on pure logistics.
Running on fumes.
Completely. And it means you start running on what we call legacy data.
Legacy data, what's that?
The generative part of your relationship, the part that creates new memories, new inside jokes, new shared experiences, that part has died. So the only thing you have to connect over is the past.
So you're just telling the same old stories. Remember that trip to Italy? Remember when we first met?
You're recycling old content because you're not creating any new content. The well has run dry. You're talking about the past because the present is too shallow to talk about and the future is too terrifying.
And this must lead to a total avoidance of deep talk.
It has to, because deep talk, talking about your fears, your dreams, your disappointments, how you actually feel about the relationship, that takes a huge amount of that system too. High effort, vulnerable energy.
The very energy the quiet quitter is trying to conserve for themselves.
So they deflect. Anytime the conversation starts to get real, they change the subject. You say, I've been feeling really lonely lately. And they say, did you remember to pay the electric bill?
It's deflection as a survival tool.
It is. The conversations become limited to the superficial trifecta, the weather, the chores, and the bills. You talk about the house you share, but never the life you're supposed to be sharing within it.
You've achieved a perfectly low-friction existence, but you've sacrificed the entire relationship to get there.
The room is quiet, but it's also completely empty.
Okay, this is...
Yeah.
It's heavy, but it's also incredibly clarifying. So for someone who's listening, and this is all hitting very close to home, where do they even begin to figure out if this is fixable? We need a health audit.
We do. And the first step is a tool for self-assessment. This is really for the person who suspects they might be the one who is quietly quitting. It's something I call the future vision test.
Okay, how does that work?
It's simple, but it requires a moment of really brutal honesty with yourself. You need to find a quiet space, close your eyes, and I want you to vividly imagine your life in 5 years.
Your ideal life.
Your ideal life. What does your happiest, most fulfilled day look like? Where are you living? What are you doing for work? What brings you joy? Really build that picture in your mind.
So you create the vision first.
You create the vision of your most authentic, joyful future self. Then you ask yourself a very specific question, not, is my partner there? But if they are there, what are they doing?
Ah, that's a different question.
It's a very different question. And the big flashing red light for RQQ is if your partner shows up in your vision, but only as a background character.
A shadow.
A shadow, or part of the furniture. They're there, maybe they're making coffee in the background, or they're handling some logistical task, but they are fundamentally irrelevant to the core of your joy in that vision. They're wallpaper.
If you can imagine your happiest future and your partner is basically interchangeable with a roommate,
Yeah.
then you have your answer.
You have your answer. In a healthy, thriving relationship, when you do this exercise, your partner should show up as your co-pilot.
They're integral to the vision.
They're actively shaping it with you. They're part of the adventure. If they're just scenery, then you've been quiet quitting, even if you haven't admitted it to yourself yet. You're no longer building a life with them.
Okay, so you do the test, the results are not good, you see the shadow, but you decide you want to try to fix it. What's the first step?
The only prescription is radical honesty. The only way to fix quiet is to make the relationship loud again.
You have to break the silence.
You have to break it intentionally. This is that moment where you have to force yourself out of that comfortable autopilot system 1 thinking and into deliberate high-effort system 2.
And that's terrifying because it means making yourself vulnerable again. The very thing you stopped doing to protect yourself.
It's the hardest step. But you have to be the one to name it. You have to say out loud, I feel like I've checked out, I haven't been present, I've stopped fighting for us, and I think I know why. Can we talk about it?
You have to own your retreat before you can ask for help rebuilding the bridge.
You must. But what about the other person, the one who's been on the receiving end? They need a path forward, too.
Right. They've been living in this fog of ambiguity.
They have. And their job is to make the quiet quitting impossible to continue. They have to raise the stakes. They have to stop accepting the superficial.
So instead of just accepting the fine when they ask how the day was,
They have to say, no, that's not working for me anymore. When you just say fine and change the subject, I feel shut out. I feel alone in this relationship, and we need to talk about why. You refuse to play your part in the performance of cohabitation anymore.
you essentially force the system 2 shift onto them. You make them choose. Either engage with me for real, or we have to acknowledge what's actually happening here.
You make the cost of avoidance higher than the cost of engagement. It's a huge cognitive shift for both people. You have to actively choose to re-engage, believing that the pain of an honest conversation is better than the slow death of a silent one.
And that choice leads to the final, essential question, doesn't it? After you've done the test, after you've had the hard conversation, you have to decide if it's actually worth it.
That's the ultimate cost analysis. You have to look at the relationship and decide, is the structure of what we have genuinely worth the energy it's going to take to repair it?
And the structure is the house, the shared history, the kids, the financial entanglement. It's the anchor holding you there.
It's everything that helps you avoid that event horizon. And the energy is, well, it's immense. It's the therapy, the vulnerability, the daily grinding work of rebuilding trust and connection. It's committing to making the relationship loud and messy and alive again.
And if you realize that the fundamental reason you detached in the first place, maybe it was a core incompatibility or a deep resentment that you've just been masking, is still there.
Then you might realize that the energy required is just too much, that you'd only be fighting to save the house but not the home. And that is a moment of painful but necessary clarity.
And we have to be honest here. Sometimes, after all that work, the answer is no. The energy is better spent elsewhere.
It is. And sometimes the healthiest, kindest thing for everyone involved is a clean, honest, loud quitting. A respectful breakup is infinitely better than staying in an empty room together for another 10 years. Clarity, even when it hurts, is always the better long-term choice. It lets you both go find a place where you can actually be seen.
What a deep and I think incredibly important dive into a topic that affects so many people. If we can just synthesize for a moment, we've learned that relationship quiet quitting is really defined by what's not there. The absence of conflict, the absence of connection.
And it's driven by our brain's most basic instincts for fear and convenience, our deep desire to avoid that scary event horizon.
And we spot it through those tiny poisonous micro-withdrawals. It really drives home that metaphor.
Right.
That silence isn't always golden. Sometimes it's just the sound of a slow gas leak.
And you have to make a choice, a real, conscious, System 2 choice. Either you open the windows and turn on the lights and deal with the problem head on, or you have to get out of the house.
And for anyone listening who sees themselves in any part of this story, what is the final thought you'd leave them with?
I just say that your heart, your emotional energy, it deserves to be in a home, a place that's alive, where things are growing, where vulnerability is safe. It should never be treated like a storage unit, just a place to keep old history and guarded feelings. You deserve to be a co-pilot in your own life, not just scenery in someone else's.
That's a powerful way to end.
Okay.
And it leaves me with one final thought for our listeners to mull over. If we know that RQQ is so often a defense mechanism against past pain, against feeling unheard, what are the small, daily, intentional investments we can all make to ensure our relationship feels so fundamentally safe that our partner never even feels the need to start building that wall in the first place?